My name is retired Chief Frank Mikulski.
So, Chief, welcome. How long have you lived in Hillsdale?
Well, we came into the borough around 1966 or so, because at the time you were required to, if you were a police officer, you were required to live in the borough. And so we live upstairs on the third floor over what was Louis Lipschitz's Park Wine and Liquor store at the time, which is now Starbucks. We lived there for a number of years. And then, actually, we had an apartment in Hackensack when I came on the job, and about a year or so later, we managed to get this apartment. And during that time, apparently there was a action in the courts that they couldn't force you, so we were able to purchase our first home over in Washington Township. And then we moved back into the borough around in the late, I guess, around mid-'70s, and I've been here ever since. Washington Avenue for a while, and I've been over here since '76 on Knickerbocker.
So, I guess we're going to take a time machine and take us back to late 1960s when you first arrived in town. What appealed to you? What's your earliest memory? Can you talk about some of the changes in town as compared to now, as of yesteryear, certain landmarks that were there maybe back in the late 60s that are not here any longer, are replaced with commercial buildings?
Well, as far as coming here, and you've heard this story about how I got here, it was really an act of fate that I came here at all. I had gotten out of the military, and my cousin was encouraging me to take the exam for Hackensack, where we lived, and he was a lieutenant. And he said, take some exams for practice. And I saw an ad for Saddle River and Hillsdale in the paper. I had no idea where Hillsdale was, but I got lost on the way to Saddle River. So I wound up I saw a sign that said, welcome to Hillsdale. I said, well, I'm only doing this for practice. And I was late for the exam. Jerry Schmidt was here on the desk, Lieutenant Schmidt. And he said, we closed at 5 o'clock. And I said, well, I'm so disappointed. I heard so much about your beautiful town. I had never heard of Hillsdale. So he said, all right. You have to fill this out and get it back by 9 o'clock tomorrow morning before the chief comes in. And they were going to hire one officer. 10 of us took the test, and 4 of us passed. And George Allen, who was just fresh out of the Marine Corps, lifelong resident, was the shoe-in. I wasn't too concerned. I was only taking it for practice. In any case, second slot opened up. They offered me the job, and I took it. So that's how I got here. My first tour of duty was 4 to 12 on Christmas Eve, 1963, and I ate in Basso's restaurant, which is now the Osabuco. Before Basso's, it had been a gas station. People don't know that. And at the time, I would say the borough was quite different. Half the streets weren't paved. We eventually wound up getting slow reseal on half the streets before they finally did pave them all. King's Restaurant was Koenig's Restaurant, which was a famous catering place. It had big events there on all the holidays. And summertime, they had softball games. They actually had a softball field back where the DPW building is now. The industrial area was different. We had Sam Brain's concrete factory there, no garbage. And Sam Brain's was there for some time before they finally left. There was a glove factory there that caught fire and burned down, which was owned by the Rodinos. Who I happened to go to high school with. The other, St. John's Church was over across the street from the TD Bank at the time, and that burned. The high school was about a third of the size that it is now. And
about the Royal Hills, Chief?
Royal Hills was mostly undeveloped at the time. Mostly, I'm not sure the dates when some of those developers started popping up in there. Kind of runs together, but it was mostly undeveloped. But Demers was there. Mr. and Mrs. were running that little shack on the west side of the street, which has been removed now. It's that parking area, but they did business there for quite some time, and then they moved across the street to the big facility, which was created quite a bit of turmoil in the neighborhood. There was going to be a lot of demonstrating, and at the council meeting, Chief Schramm at the time sent me up there and said, make sure we keep order. And we were shocked to find out that most of the people were there in support of the move. And you saw what Demers developed into as far as serving the community. So
Sure, and Winters Farm was still in operation back then, correct me if I'm wrong.
the Winters family and house was still there, but they had that little shack where the current Demer's is.
Right.
But they weren't doing business. I don't recall them doing business. I think they were just closed. And then that burned down one night, too. As a matter of fact, I was on patrol and saw that fire from across the parkway. And we had heard stories that there was a squatter in there, so I got a little upset, but there was no one in there. It was just, then they removed it.
As we go on, the thoughts are coming into my head. You've obviously served through different war periods. Is there anything that sticks out in mind, maybe the Vietnam War period, where there was protests? You had mentioned some protesting.
You know, I was kind of on the fringes of most of that. I was just before a lot of it. I did my service at Fort Dix, so, and I always, even when I go to the Legion, I feel in awe of the other members who served and shed their blood and sweat in the field. I never did that. I feel kind of unequal standing there with them, but I did what I was told and went where I was told. So. Sure. But
you wore the uniform. We've kind of alluded to this before when you did become a member of the Hillsdale Police Department,
1963, Christmas Eve. Yeah.
How many years were you on the force?
I did 42 and a half years.
42 and a half years. That's the average, just so viewers know, the average career is about 25 to 30 years. What motivated you to do such a long career? I mean, for the benefit of the audience that will be watching this, we know that you got elevated to the rank of chief, and I assume that's, you really enjoyed your rank as chief. But talk about what motivated an individual to probably do.
I didn't have anything else to do.
20 years of your career.
I didn't have anything else. That was my thing. No, listen, you don't serve any position in 42 years if you don't really love what you're doing. And there was never a day I didn't want to come to work. There were days when I was ready to come to work, and there were days when I couldn't wait to come to work. And listen, this is not a cops and robbers community. We know that. This is a public service community, and I was always into that. Even when I didn't have the position or the power to do some of the community-related things I thought should be done, I finally did get that opportunity as chief, and I think I did that. But it kind of went in phases. It wasn't like, I can't wait to go to work today, but tomorrow not so much. It kind of went in blocks of time, and it depended on a lot of things. Like if let's say something really good happened, or something exciting, or you saved a life, or your partner, well, that carried you like for the next maybe couple months. You were on a high, and you couldn't wait to, well, maybe we can do it again, and do something good. Conversely, if something negative would occur, you kind of say, oh man, I hope we don't have that problem, like that. So it was kind of went in phases, but I was always ready to come to work. But some days, and a lot had to do with some of the personnel. I mean, when I was scheduled to work at 4 to 12 with John Foley, Eddie LaFrance, and Chief Frankie Villa's father, I couldn't wait to get to work, because I knew that no matter what, we had each other's back. We do anything to serve and protect. Car accident, fire, just people troubled. With those guys at your back, it was just a great feeling to be there. And that was kind of my personal history, Because the first thing they asked me when I interviewed for the job was, why do you want to be a policeman? And I said, I'm just 22. I've been in...
Captain, are you in the building?
And I've been on the ambulance corps in Hackensack for 4 years helping people. I just like to help people. I bandage up a little kid who fell. I feel good when I'm done. I guess that's, what it's supposed to be like, and that's how I felt throughout my career here. I always tried to do the right thing. I tried to convey that message. I know I always didn't do the right thing, but I figured if you went in with that mentality of trying to do the right thing, even if you messed up, you probably still manage it. So I try to carry that forward. And
well, you did a great job. I would imagine that coming on the job in 1963, you served under a lot of World War II veterans that probably had a very authoritarian style of, get out there and do it, and I don't want to hear any flack. Is that true? Can you think of one boss that you
I guess we're talking about the old days.
The old days. first came
the way things used to be done, and certainly
Not the
not.
millennials.
And I learned a lot of lessons on how to do some things and maybe not how to do some things. But these were good people. I tell you what, it was such an honor to serve with Neil Stewart and Vin McCarthy, and I don't want to name names because I'm going to forget somebody. But Jerry Schmidt, Chief Risco was a really good man, a good chief, a good server of the community. Always, again, try to do what was right, and.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of meeting those gentlemen. And like you said, they were men then and good people. Again, we kind of talked about this a little earlier. As you drive around town today, as compared when you first moved to town, is there something that sticks out to you? Do you say to yourself, I wish that landmark still existed, or isn't it a shame that they took this down and replaced it with residential neighborhoods? Or is there a favorite restaurant that you had that's not there anymore?
No, it's not so much that as just how the things that were here originally are changed or gone. But I don't have any really emotional contact to any of those things. A lot of other maybe in other areas that I some things that have changed that shouldn't have, and other things not so much. I try to be involved with the kids a lot. As you know, I was originally on the staff of the Hillsdale football, the Hawks program, and that program is still alive and well today. Yeah, and doing, there's still a lot of good people involved, and we had a lot of great people come through that program. Some interesting stories that came out of that. Not only my policing but my coaching career, and they really worked hand in hand. It was really a benefit for me because the kids in this town. Most of the kids, anyway, they could relate to me. They trusted me as their football coach. They knew me more there than not. And this, one story that sticks out was I had a young man that played for me, and in the junior league in the 8th grade. And a number of years later, I was chief, and I get a call one day from he says, Chief, he said, this is so and so. He said, I'm going to college out here in Kansas, and he said, I got in a little trouble. He said, there's a trooper pulled me over, and, he kind of looked at my ashtray, and he kind of saw something in there maybe shouldn't have been there. So I said, well, what did he do? He said, well, he gave me a summons, and I have to go to court, and I wanted to know what should I do. So I said, you go in there, stand up like a man, tell the judge what you did, and see what happens. So he hangs up, and I said, I guess I'll never hear from him again, About 2 or 3 weeks later, the phone rings, and it's him again. He says, Coach, I did what you told me. He said, I haven't felt this good in years. He said, I went in there, the judge smacked me around a little bit, took some money, made me promise never to do it again, and he said, you know what, I won't. So, here's a kid, when you coach, to me, and when you're a police officer, to me, those are the kind of stories that stand out. That's what, this is Hillsdale. That's what we're supposed to be about. Whether the first group of coaches and people on the Hawks program, half of us were police officers with no children involved in the program. It was in 1979, and there were no Hawks. The other towns all had organized football. In Hillsdale, we had recreational. They play against each other all the time. And we decided to get involved, and Joe Talamo was the athletic director at the time, and he helped us get it done. But stories like another kid who really troubled family, lots of problems, and the kind of kid that could really turn into a problem, and football saved him. He was failing every subject. They called me over there, and they said, we're not going to let him play anymore, because I said, look, you got to give him one more chance. We're going to lose this boy. Well, he's out there today. He's got his children. He's got his own painting business in the nearby community here. So,
very inspiring.
Yeah.
Chief, getting back to our early conversation about family and what brought you to Hillsdale, can you expand a little bit about your family and any service they might have provided to the town?
No, well, actually, as I said earlier, I never even heard of Hillsdale. I grew up in Hackensack. My father ran away from home from Pine Island, New York, when he was 15 years old, and wound up working at Goldberg Slipper Factory, which is where the county jail is now, and that's where I met my mom. My mother grew up in the south end of Hackensack on Hudson Street near the courthouse, and they met at Goldberg's, and they were married, and after that, my father went on to drive a truck for Packard of Bambergers, which is where Target is now. And his claim to fame was every year on the roof of the third floor of Packard's, they had a Christmas display of elves and a sleigh, and someone had to go up there and put the lights up, and he's the only one that would go up and do it. He'd climb up that tower, and my father was fearless. He had his problems. My mom had health problems. He had health problems, but he was a good father, and he was a tough guy. He would go crabbing with his friends. I was too little to go, and he'd pull up in front of the house, and I'd run out, and I'd say, Dad, did you catch any crabs? And he'd open up the back of the car and take the bushel out and shake the bushel and stick his hand in it. And he'd pick up a crab on each finger. His hands were about that, but he never hit me. If he ever hit me, I probably wouldn't be here today. But that was my dad. My mom, she suffered with arthritis in her early years, in her 50s. But she worked around near the house. She worked for a while down there in a all-white pen company. But that was it. We were simple, people. We didn't have a whole lot. And like I say, when I went to high school, I was one of those who I was pretty smart, but I wasn't a great student. I was too busy drawing up football plays, doing math class and stuff like that. Thank God I had the football coach for Algebra 2. I never would have made it out of the classroom. But I decided I'd give it a shot, so I was playing ball. I played football in Hackensack, so we met up.
Hackensack High?
Hackensack High School, yeah. And we, my buddy and I got some help from the coach. We got up to Montclair State, which was Montclair State Teachers College at the time. And so I went down there, and my goal, of course, was to be a football coach. That was my all-time goal. Back then, you couldn't do that unless you were a teacher, so I had to go to teachers college. So, but I learned some things along the way with teachers and also professors, that they have a great impact on young people. And I thought that would be a great thing, because I saw some of the good things they did for young people, and I also saw some of the not so good things they did for young people. And I said, no, I can do it better than that. Well, long story short, it didn't work out. I lasted 2 years at Montclair State. My father's was getting worse. My mom's health was bad. I had no money. Actually, the last few months, I was still playing ball. I only did a year and a half, so that semester, fall semester, I was still playing football. I had a friend in Hackensack that took me to school. I didn't have a car. We didn't have a car. And I had to hitchhike home from Montclair State to Hackensack. I'd hitch up to the bus stop and take a bus. I'd get a ride to Patterson, where Mark Howell used to be, and I'd take that old bus from down Essex Street to the courthouse and walk home. So it was a little rough there, so I just couldn't do it anymore. So my dream to be a teacher and a coach was gone. And then I did some time. I worked in a post office for a while, a couple of years, and then I went into the military. I actually went to the recruitment office down there in Hackensack, and I wanted to be an MP, and he was going to send me to Fort Gordon, Georgia, to be an MP, and I passed all the tests. And then my good friend from the ambulance corps, Sal Ziza, no relation to the Ziza family in Hackensack, him and his brother had been long-term members of the Jersey National Guard. So he said, why don't you come with us? You're going to do your 6 months, but then we get the outfit's a nice bunch of guys. And also, I went to the recruiter. He said, it's okay, no problem. And I did that. And when I got out of there, I was doing a little clerking, waiting for the police exam to come. And because my cousin said, why don't you come on a police job? I had 2 cousins on the job, actually, at the time in Hackensack. And they were civil service, so I had to wait for their exam. So that's why I was checking the paper for practice.
Chief, what was the starting salary back in 1964 or 65?
It was $100 a week.
$100
It was $50 to $100 a year. Yeah. And that was pretty good money back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you want to touch upon your daughter Nancy? How she gives a lot of time back to the community. She volunteers at the Hillsdale House, does exercise classes.
Yeah, going back a little bit, my wife grew up in Irvington, and she was a banker. She worked in a bank, but down there, and then she was working in Hackensack here. And we had my first daughter within almost about a year after we were married. We had my first daughter, Patty, who she's done pretty well. She went to Pascack Valley High School. She went to the Berkeley School for secretarial, and she's been working for an outfit, Winebow Industries, which is a major a wine importing company up here. They were in Montvale. As a matter of fact, they just moved out of there. So she's still with them to this day. She's done pretty well. My daughter Nancy was born with neurological impairment, so she struggles with that a little bit. But she's a tough kid. She's great. She's very highly functional. She's been involved. A lot of people know her. She's been involved in the community. She serves at all the senior luncheons and all that. And she did some time over volunteering over the Hillsdale House with the borough nurse, helping out over there. And she really liked working with the seniors and that. And she's got, there are always issues when you don't have a whole lot of social exposure, but she's happy. She's a good worker. She's a good kid. So.
Very nice. And your wife, correct me if I'm wrong, Mary Ann, did she not do crossing guard duty for a couple of years?
She did. She served as a guard a little bit. I can't pin down the years, but it had to coincide when the kids were in the right places in school, because she was at home. She was stay-at-home mom with the kids when they were little. So I'm going to guess, I don't know, that might have been around late 80s, late 70s. Yeah, it's like somewhere in the late 70s. She did that for a few years.
I don't think people realize how dangerous that job is. Crossing guard.
I'll tell you what, we've had some great ones in this town. Some really dedicated people out there in all that weather. You count on them, and they each of them know every one of their kids. If a kid hasn't shown up by the end of the day, they find out it's so-and-so. They ask the other kids, hey, where's little Johnny today? How come he's not here yet? We've had a lot of that. They're really been a great service to the kids in this community for years.
Can you tell us where your parents came from?
My parents?
Were they immigrants?
No, they were both born in this country. Like I said, my father was born up in Pine Island, New York, and my mother was born in Hackensack. Well, I'm not sure exactly, but my mother, I think, might have been delivered by a midwife, but I'm not sure of that, in Hackensack. She lived downtown Hackensack, again, like I said, near the firehouse, courthouse down there. My father, I have no idea, didn't have much contact with his family over the years. They just weren't close by, But it was a big deal to take a trip up to the country to visit one of my uncles in Middletown, or his sister lived in Sussex, but right near the New York border, and I had a cousin my same age, so when I was 10, 12, 13, like that, I'd go up and stay up there with him for a week, and he'd take me fishing, and he'd take me out in the back to the dumps and shoot rats and that. And then he'd come here for a week, and I'd take him to the Yankee Stadium and take him bowling and stuff like that. So we had a nice thing for 5 or 6 years until we both kind of grew out of it.
Very nice. So getting back to your memories about being on the police force, I know from doing this job come a lot of funny stories, and it's going to be a hard question to answer probably. Is there one particular story that sticks out that just brings a smile to your face every time you tell it or every time you think of it? Was there a certain prank played on you maybe, or something like that? I mean, I know a lot of my fun stories come from animal calls. People don't realize I had a call one time of an alligator in a roadway, only to come and find an Egyptian monitor that Tyco Animal Control told me what it was and had the ability to bite my hand off, but yet I was handling it. So.
Well, I don't know. It's a lot of years to remember. A lot of stories. Animals come to mind. I was brand new when one of the veterans drove a cow home in the back seat of the police car. I have a certificate at home from a resident because I rounded up 2 deer off Kinnecamack Road one day. They didn't get hit, so they sent me a nice certificate as the deer rodeo or whatever. I forget what it was. Stuff like that. Listen, it's been so many positive things, and I'm sure like things will come to me after I'm gone, after I leave here today, but,
All right, for the benefit of the viewers, I know I'm jumping around a bit, I'm going back. The police booth in town, a lot of people don't realize the history of the police booth and where it was originally located and the original duties that were worked out of that police booth. When you first came on, can you describe to me what it served as and maybe some of the history or maybe some of the funny stories that came out of it? I know there was a lot of shenanigans going on in that little police booth.
yeah.
And for the benefit of the audience, the police booth was relocated in 1992 because of motor vehicle accidents.
Right. Well, it was virtually, literally, right in the middle of the street, dead center of that intersection. It was prior to my coming here. It was actually police headquarters for a number of years. But when I came, it was still. It had a direct telephone line. If you just picked it up, you got the desk officer. I don't know dispatchers. The desk officer. It had a big alarm bell in it, which was used to call the foot patrol officer because there was no other communication at the time. There were no portable radios. And when I first came here, up until 1969, Chief Stokel was a real stickler for foot posts and foot patrol and storches. As the store checks, every door had to be checked and pulled 4 times a night, twice on each shift. So you were out of the car a lot on foot downtown without communication. So if they needed you to go on a call, they'd ring the bell at the booth, you know. It was kind of a standing joke. Stewart would scream out, "The booth bell's ringing, the booth bell's ringing." And it could have meant anything. It could have meant, "Get me a cup of coffee," or it could have meant, "You got an accident up the road," whatever. But it was our only communication. Funny story about the night of the post office robbery. My good friend Andy Roloff, who lived in a big house on the corner, which is now Friendly's Ice Cream, it was a warm summer night, and he was out on the porch with his wife. It was dark. I didn't even see them there. And I go around to the back of the post office, and I discover the back door is unlocked on the loading dock. So I go inside, and I peek in. I can see the inside door is broken, and everything is amiss. So I run off the loading dock. I had to run down the street to the corner, pick up the call box to call from my backup officer to say, "Come on, now we're going to go inside." And of course, inside we find the safes laying down, peeled open, and it was quite a substantial robbery. But the story about what I'm getting at is Mr. Roloff, a couple of days later, and he said, "My wife and I thought you were losing your mind. We saw you walk up, run away, run back, and then all of a sudden all the police cars came." So yeah, things were different back then. No radios. The booth was the hub of operation, and also it was a traffic post every morning, all commuter time, every morning from 7 to 9, 11:30 to 1, and from, I'm thinking, 5 to 7 in the evening. You were in that booth working the light by hand to maintain traffic flow, and a lot of stuff emanated out of that booth, a lot of funny stuff and arrests and stuff too. I remember the one guy, 5 times he parks in a bus stop, and the buses are backing up, and I'm screaming across the street, blowing my whistle, and he'd move, and he'd come around a block and do it again, and finally I put the light on automatic and went over. I said, "What are you doing?" So I had to take some action there, but there were funny stories. Cars crashing into it, some serious stuff, some funny stuff, The one night we had an officer in auxiliary who owned a store downtown. He was helping us. A garbage truck went through the front window of the bakery, which was Hillsdale Bakery at the time, which is now the shave place. And he was helping us out, and he goes, and he had bad leg. And he goes into the booth to use the phone, and his knee goes out. He falls on the floor. He must have been there for almost an hour. And everybody said, "Where's Bernie? Where's Bernie?" And poor Bernie was laying in the booth. There was so much noise and confusion with tow truck. Nobody could hear him saying, "Hey, guys, I'm in here." The door closed behind him. So,
That's
funny story from the booth.
I remember reading a story from Neil Stewart when he used to drive taxi cabs, and one of his passengers happened to be Yogi Berra. And I know a couple athletes lived in town. Have you ever had an encounter with somebody famous that lived in town?
Yes.
Kind of transported through town, came through town?
Actually, a good friend. We got pretty friendly. John Cooks, who was pitched in the '56 World Series for the Yankees, and they lived across from me on Oakland Street. And matter of fact, his daughter's still in the house today. John passed away a few years ago, but we got pretty friendly there. And John was a super gentleman. He really was. And then pretty good pitcher in his day. He wound up with the Red Sox, I think. But we played golf once or twice, and he was an awesome, just a great gentleman. And near the end, when he wasn't feeling so well, you know, I had this little dog, this little Wesley. I used to walk him up the street, and John would, I guess, see us go by, because by the time we came back down, he'd be out on the driveway waiting to play with Prince for a while. And he loved seeing it, you know, and it was a good thing. I liked John, and that was a good memory of him. And we had a number of other athletes in town from time to time. I mean, like Yogi, we had Billy Scourin, who also was with the Yankees at the time. He was up there on Douglas Drive.
Have you ever went to his house for any sort of domestic issue? I know he, you know, judging from the newspaper articles at the time, there was some domestic related issues.
Yeah, there were a couple of things like that, but most of it was not Bill's fault.
So we read about.
Yeah.
Any other towns?
You know, he was on the road a lot. He was on the road a lot, so enough said.
Any, with the passing of time and obviously the sensitivity, is there any town secrets that you've been holding on to that are acceptable to release?
No, you know what? There's nothing really that would be secret, I don't think. You know, God. Trying to. No, nothing secret. Just a lot of stuff that went on that probably a lot of people aren't aware about. You know, we had some rough times here back in the '70s. You know, labor issues and that. When this building was dedicated in 1973, we actually walked a picket line in front over contract issues. We had the prior mayor refused to cross the picket line because he believed in us. You know, we behaved like professionals, and we went to a mediator. There was no binding at the time, and we went to a mediator, and we got the decision, and then the governing body at the time refused to honor the decision, and so we got, it's probably the one thing in my entire career that I really am not pleased with, but we did some things that we probably shouldn't have done. You know, policemen are not supposed to walk like fools with picket signs, but we did it. But that was a long time.
Family members as well, correct?
Everybody.
So you brought up mayors, and that triggers something. And I know, just from doing my own history projects, there's been some real characters. And I think, if I recall, there was a mayor in the mid-'60s who happened to be a Marine who used to yell at the train. And if you could...
Well, he was the mayor that wouldn't cross the picket line.
Dick Englander, right, was the mayor doing that?
No, Englander was the mayor at the time of the incident. This ex-Marine was Gil Bush.
Gil Bush.
And he was the one who showed up for the event, for the dedication of the building. And when he saw us out front, he refused to cross the picket line. And we were his boys, you know. He was, he had some, he liked to stop and get off the train and have a few at Louis back in the day. And that always led to some kind of a confrontation, because he was kind of a boastful, very proud guy. He wore that Marine blazer everywhere, and he backed up the police force and back then we needed it. Things were not so great, and we were his boys, so to speak, but it was a price to pay for that, you know. He was he was colorful, you know, and we had to put up with some uncomfortableness from time to time and kind of mend some fences after, you know, once you go home, Mr. Mayor, I'll take care of this type of thing, and people understood, and it's good. But the one highlight was before the Hillsdale became the PBA Local 207. We're in PBA Local 102, which encompassed every town from here to Saddlebrook, Rochelle Park. It was like 20-something towns in the local. And they like to bring in guest speakers from time to time. So this one particular night, they invited Mayor Gil Bush of Hillsdale to come and speak at the PBA meeting. And you know, we knew that the mayor was capable of saying almost anything. So we were kind of cringing in a corner at our table out of the way. And he goes on to speak about how he works with his local police, and you guys do a great job. And he's building this crescendo, and he ends it by climbing up in his Marine blazer on climbing up onto his table and standing there and screaming as loud, "Gentlemen, I salute you." The place went crazy. There the guys are coming on, the cops from all over coming, shaking our hands. "Boy, you guys, you got a maid up there that's really great with the mayor." And we were like, "Yeah, we got a maid, but there are times when we got to pay for that, you know." But again, it was a little different back then. But he was a good man. This was a guy who, you know, do anything for the community. And
Sounds like it. What about judges? Any particular memories come to mind? I know the courtroom can be a funny place sometimes.
Judge Bentley would sit up there and sleep for 2 hours, just like that. And then he would come and say, "But counselor, 15 minutes ago you said," and he would quote him verbatim. He was incredible. You'd think he was asleep. He never missed a word. And then we had Judge Dorfman after that, who was an absolute genius. This guy could quote the law books, and him too. He would be up there like, and he would be like, and he was very pro-police. I mean, he would never let a police officer get abused on his stand. He was very fair. He found lots of people not guilty, and he wasn't the greatest punisher, but he believed in people had to understand the law. And he'd say, like, "Counselor, how many times are you going to ask the officer that question?" He says, "I even know the answer. Let's move on," you know, that kind of thing. So he was pretty positive with the troops for quite a while. And then near the end, there was some conflicts, and so they replaced him. But Judge Dorfman just passed recently also, in the 90s.
99,
He used to go to his office almost every day up until the last year or so down in Hackensack.
Mm-hmm.
And did a lot of good things for the guys in town, the community. He's a good man.
Absolutely. Chief, what changes in the police department are you most proud of and happiest that they occurred?
Well, this is not a cops and robbers operation. I said that before. And by no means am I trying to promote myself or pat myself on the back in any way, because none of the things that accomplished during my tenure and after would have anything to do with me anymore than it had to do with all the guys, men and women, who did the things the way I thought they should have been done. The time when I took over as chief was a time when the community policing was becoming a buzzword. I can't tell you how many times I heard an officer on this telephone say, "I'm sorry, ma'am, we don't handle that. We can't help you." And I'm like, what problem could that possibly have been? And you can't help? What, you need a plumber? You can't say, "Call Brighton back"? We are here to help you. That attitude had to change a little bit. So when it was getting close to where I thought, hey, you know what, I might have a shot to be chief here, those are the kind of things I need to start thinking about. And it was more, I believe that if you weren't on board with community policing, you were going to miss the boat, because it was just taking off then. When I took over as chief, if my memory still serves me, we had DARE and maybe one other. When I left here and Chief Stalter took over, him and I had put together, I think we left with 23 or 24 community-based projects in place. Chief Stalter maintained most of those, although he had some issues where he lost a few people. A couple things had to be put aside, but he tried to bring them back. And what Chief Francavilla has done is incredible. He brought back all of those and lots of new stuff that no one even thought about. And that's what this job in a town like this is all about, is to provide services to the community that either they can't get anyplace else, or they can't get it done as well as they will get it done by a police officer who's trained to do nothing but help people. And we believe in that here. That was no, we didn't just do it. We believed it. That was my style of leadership, my style I grew up, like I said, 17, 18 years old, joining the ambulance corps to help people. Made me feel good. So the day I left here, whenever I helped somebody, it made me feel good. Whether it was a young man on a football field at the Hawks or at Pascack Valley where I coached all those years, or whether it was here, or whether it was doing it myself or seeing one of my personnel do it. I still got that same feeling. This was great stuff. And what happened is it started to catch on. Officers back then were reluctant. Some of the older guys were reluctant, but some of them left shortly thereafter The newer people bought into it. They come to me, Chief, I have this idea for a new program. I never said no. Go try it. What's the worst could happen? It doesn't work. Well, guess what? They almost all worked. And we had people out there, I wouldn't say competing, but actually everyone had their own little niche. And when we'd have department meetings, I would remind them and say, guys, this is your department. It's not mine. Look what you're making out of it. You have to put us in a position where if a resident criticizes the police department, 10 people say they're full of it. And I think we came pretty close to that, and I know it's that way today. I mean, I listen to people out there. This department has a very high image, and I like to hope and think that, you know, maybe I had something to do with starting that atmosphere back in the 90s.
There's no doubt about that, and just so people are aware, you talk about the changes in technology. You went from a paper blotter to computers. You went from regular CPR to defibrillators, and the list goes on and on.
Exactly.
So,
when we had
a lot to do with it too.
when we needed a lookup on a license plate, you had to call Trenton on a telephone, and you could hear the guy running down the hall to look in the file cabinet to look up the license plate for you while you waited on the phone for 25 minutes. And we finally got it back and told the officer, oh, that guy is wanted. And she said, well, I let him go 15 minutes ago. I mean, now the guys ride by and they're punching in plates as they drive by. So, yeah, technology is a great thing for us in that area.
You and I both worked September 11, 2001. What sticks out in your memory from that day? To Hillsdale. We all know what happened to the country. And
Everybody remembers where you were. You know, that question, where were you on 9/11? Everybody knows the answer to that. And I just hope, and I said this, by the way, some of my involvement with the Chiefs Association had to do with the fact that I was president the year after that, and we erected a monument at the Garden State Plaza. It's a beautiful monument dedicated to 9/11 people. And if anyone, a little commercial here, if you happen to be over at the Garden State Plaza on the second rotunda opposite Macy's, take a look at that monument that was erected by the Bergen County Police Chiefs Association. I was president at the time, and really, it was the highlight of my presidential term was that monument over there. Well, on 9/11 itself, I was here. It was, we had a Chiefs meeting and I was vice president, so I'm sitting in the office ready to go, and Detective Niego comes in and says, Chief, come here, you got to see this. He said, they just had a plane crash into one of the towers. So I come out, and we're all standing there watching, and all of a sudden we see the second plane coming in, and it was like just this silence, and we all just looked at each other, and that was no accident. So that moment stands out in my mind. The aftermath, I don't even like to think about. You know, some people have that photograph of the towers on their wall. I don't even like to look at that picture. It's just too horrible to remember. You know, anyone that lived in this age, generation, and that's got to be the worst day of your life, or if not, aside from personal tragedy. And I fear that. You know, that's beginning to wane a little bit. I was honored to be the speaker at the 9/11 ceremony last year at the plaza, and that was part of the context of my short talk, is that we can't let that slip by the wayside. It's just another tragic event. I mean, it represents everything this country stands for. And it's tough to see that when you ask where were you on 9/11, you know, some people don't even know where they were. That's hard to believe. But it was not a good day.
is there one hurricane or superstorm that sticks out in your career?
Well, as you know, we've got the flood zone down there, and I can go way back to when we used to have to go. We went down in there with the rowboats to get the Bertram sisters out of the second floor window of their home, kicking and screaming. They didn't want to leave. We load them into the payloader and then take them into the boats and take them out. And then the one year that we had, I forget which one it was, but it was in the fall, it was in September, and we had the carnival, and the ticket booths were floating down the brook.
Yeah.
Floyd. Must have been Floyd. Yeah. But Not one in particular, but those are the memories. I mean, when we had flooding here, we had flooding. I mean, the brook would flood across Hillsdale Avenue, right up to St. John's, right across that whole, the old Henry Iosco property. It would flood right over with it by St. John's. I mean, we got water in this town back then. We got water. It was really nasty stuff. I mean, the one year we had a number of guys recognized for their efforts, and they had to jump in and pull a guy out over in the Overbrook down on that end, about the westward border. I think Officer Mikulski got a medal for that, and we had a rescue officer sitting on the roof of one of the buildings down here. The water was 12 to 15 feet deep on Broadway opposite Kmart. So we've had some real hectic days. Yeah, and you know, I just wanted to do maybe reflect a little bit on my experiences at the high school as far as coaching football over there. It was. I said early on, that was my goal, to be a football coach, and you know, I've really been blessed because I got to be a police officer. I got to be a teacher. I mean, I taught defensive driving for years here. I taught at the police academy. I gave some classes at the high school. Coached football for 35 years altogether, with 13 years with the Hawks and 22 years at Pascagoula Valley, and became the chief of police. So I'm kind of blessed, man. I touched every base, you know, along the way, and I'm grateful for all that. But the people at the high school were great all along. I coached with some really good people. The character over there, I mean, Pascagoula Valley has always been known for pretty good athletic programs, but I never served with a coach over there that didn't delve into the character and the concept of developing. Actually, Coach Jasper said that we don't develop athletes, we develop young men and women. And I had some great experiences over there with great staff people. Some of the kids, the way they treat you, the respect for their coaches and one another. It says a lot for high school athletics, any sport. I'm a football guy. You know, baseball's something to do while you're waiting for football to start. But any sport over there. And the number of coaches that went through there, some great people and great staff members. And I just wanted to put a word in for the Pascagoula Valley High School because it is, I would recommend it to anybody for many reasons. They're developing really fine young men and women over there. They do a great job. As you know, we have some people that work with us that are over there on staff now, and I'm sure they'll tell you the same thing. It's been a real good experience.
Well, Chief, the town of Hillsdale is very grateful to have you to serve for 42 years. Thank you for your service to the country. Thank you for your service to the town, and just thanks for being you.
Well,
thanks for taking part in this interview.
You know, the honor's been mine, and it's funny, you should say that I was over to 7-Eleven a few weeks ago, and a lady come up and that I know over the years. She said, Chief, she said, how long have you been retired now? I said, well, it's about a little over 10 years. She said, would you go back? I said, absolutely. So she looked shocked. I said, but it has to be the way it was when I left. But I've been thinking about that answer, and it's not so accurate. I think the true answer is I would go back, and I would like it to be the way it was when I left. You know, I came here with challenges. As I said, it was an era when things were changing from cops and robbers to community policing, and I don't think it's any different today. And my goal was to try to do the right thing and serve the people, and manage some of the challenges. And yeah, I think I could come back and do that today.
No doubt. I got full faith in you.
Like I said, I wouldn't change a thing. You know, I've been blessed my whole life and doing things I wanted to do, and hopefully I did them fairly well from time to time. The people that worked for me or with me were outstanding people. I mean, I look behind you at that wall and everybody that I served with. Guys are long gone when I first came, and those that are just recently left, and the young men and women we have here today. You couldn't ask for a better life experience. I mean, I've been blessed to be with these people, and I hope I did my share. You know.
It doesn't sound like you're quite yet done. Is there anything that you'd like to accomplish in the near future? Any future goals?
Hell, I'd like to get my health back so I can get back on the golf course, but I don't know. I'm getting a little arthritic. I got to forget how much time you have for health problems. You get old. That's the deal. You know, it is what it is. I got no regrets.
Well, here's to many happy returns.
Thank you.
Again.